For those of us who travel in political circles, you will be aware of the alternative right, or alt-right, if you will. A group of people predominantly on the internet, almost entirely, in fact, on the internet, who have had quite a rise in popularity recently. This rise has been caused by two primary things. The first of which is the wave of migrants which have been coming across Europe. The second of which is the actions of the so-called regressive left, or perhaps more accurately, you could say their inaction with regards to tackling radical Islam within European and American communities. And although, of course, these are both serious issues, I do not think that the alternative right is in any way something which I wish to see grow in power any further, because in many ways I find them just as repulsive as I do Islamic supremacists. And so in this video I thought that I'd carry on the great British tradition in opposing National Socialism and giving my critique of eugenics. Now, I should say at first that not all members, if one can even be called a member of the alternative right, not all members are National Socialists. They don't all advocate for eugenics, but it is indeed a very popular idea held within these groups. Now, what eugenics is the promotion of quote-unquote good genetic traits and the suppression of perceived negative ones through actions like sterilization and genocide. Of course, the question which arises from this is, what are good genes and who is to decide? First of all, I'd like to address the racial component which exists when talking about eugenics. Now, generally speaking, you will find that people who advocate for eugenics tend to believe that it's their ethnic group which is the superior one, probably because it's an act of self-preservation. It's very rare that you'll find someone who actually hates their own race. Now, there are cuckolds, don't get me wrong, but it's quite uncommon. So let's have a look at different races and take the most sort of glaring difference, if you will, which is pigmentation. What is superior? To be a white man or a black man? This is, in my estimation, entirely subjective upon environment. If you are a black man which lives in Norway, you're far more likely to develop vitamin D deficiency because your pigmentation does not permit you to absorb the necessary amount of UV rays to generate healthy vitamin D levels. Therefore, you will have great issues going forward. Obviously, though, if we transpose this to the Congo and you're a white man living there, you're far more likely to die of melanoma at a young age. So, which is superior, being white or black? This, as I say, it depends upon environment. And that is the great problem with eugenics, as I see it, is it makes a great assumption at the start. In order for eugenics to work, the following must be true. We must have a universal, unchanging environment, because what evolution teaches us is this. It is not the fact that there are necessarily superior or inferior traits. Things develop under the pressures given by the environment, and the traits which are best tackling problems given off by living in this environment will be the ones which will inevitably survive. Now, what's also important to remember is that environment is not only different wherever you go, but is also constantly fluctuating. The problem that this gives for someone who believes in eugenics is that, well, although you can make the argument that one specific set of traits are advantageous in a specific place at a specific time, that will not be the case forever. If we are trying to build the master race, the pure race, which is best suited to survive within a specific environment, what do we do when that environment changes? Let's say, for example, we want to have everyone on the planet, or perhaps everyone in Europe, being an Aryan for whatever reason. We want them to have blonde hair and blue eyes and have very similar genetic traits which are superior to therefore build our perfect and more efficient society. What happens when a pathogen is introduced which our immune systems are not good at fighting? Bear in mind, we are all genetically similar. We are all trying to build a society where each person has genetically superior traits. Well, if one of our immune systems is not strong enough to fight off this pathogen, it is entirely likely that vast swathes of the population will share that immune deficiency which will make you susceptible to that specific pathogen. The only way to ensure survival, the only way to ensure that your species will make it through changes to the environment, is to have the maximum amount of variation. And it is impossible for any human to know in advance what those changes are going to be, and so therefore we cannot develop traits which are going to be resilient towards those changes. All that we can do is try and build a society in which the genetic traits are best suited for that environment, but as soon as it changes, these traits no longer apply. And because we spend so much time destroying variation through means of sterilization and genocide to promote what we perceive to be the master race, when it is no longer suited for that environment, we are fucked. But perhaps you're not a racist. Perhaps you do think that there should be a very large amount of variation, but you think there are specific traits which are not good under any condition, that should themselves be eradicated from the human species. A trait which I would say is not desirable within any condition would be, let's say, blindness. It's almost entirely the case that this holds you back. I can't think of a circumstance in which I would want to be blind, how it would help me. However, I think that this misses a very important thing, that a man is not one attribute. He cannot be summed up by whatever fault we see within him. It may be the case that a man is blind and that this is a negative thing. However, what does this say of his intelligence? Emotional, academic, or otherwise? What does this say of his capacity to thrive within a specific society? We do not know. And if you say that you do, you are a liar. A man may be blind, and that may be a negative, but he could still be a person which is far more useful within our society than a fool who has perfect vision. So, again, the problem is that we cannot see in advance what is going to be advantageous and what is not going to be advantageous, and what the challenges will be that exist within that society. So, in my mind, the only method that we should use is this: allow everyone to enter the society. Have no state-mandated sterilization or genocide or anything such as this. Simply permit people to interact with one another, and whoever has the traits which are most desirable for that specific society will thrive regardless. This requires no input, none whatsoever. And I don't think that totalitarianism has ever been shown to be a particularly effective method of running a society. And eugenics is, in my estimation, a ludicrous concept which can never work. I've decided to come back and just make a slight edit to the video at the end. I say in the video that everyone should be allowed to enter a society. This is not me advocating for mass immigration, do not get me wrong. I don't think it's a particularly pragmatic stance, economically speaking. What I mean by that is that anyone born within a society should be able to act within that society freely, irrespective of who they are. That is all.